From Maximum City, Mumbai, to the seat of governance, Delhi, NDTV brings to you the best breakfast show. The breakfast show only on NDTV 24/7 every morning at 8 a.m.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your
You are watching the World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. We've got an action-packed bulletin lined up for you. Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. The French government has collapsed after Prime Minister Michel Barnier was ousted in a no-confidence vote. MPs vote overwhelmingly in support of the motion against him, just 3 months after he was appointed by President Emmanuel Macron. South Korea's opposition has moved to impeach President Yoon Suk-yeol over his abrupt declaration, then swift revocation of martial law. Lawmakers could vote this week on his removal, which would need the support of 8 members of Yoon's party to succeed. A masked gunman in New York City killed the CEO of United Healthcare, which is one of the US's largest medical insurers, in a brazen targeted attack. Brian Thompson, who was 50 years old, was shot on Wednesday morning outside a hotel in Midtown Manhattan, where he was set to attend the company's investor conference. Nepal and China have signed a framework agreement on the multi-billion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative, paving the way for enhanced economic cooperation on the project. Former Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina gave her first public address since being ousted in a student-led uprising earlier this year. She mounted an attack on the country's interim leader, Muhammad Yunus, over alleged persecution of minorities. Namibia has elected its first female leader, with Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah declaring the winner of last week's presidential election in a result that will extend the ruling SWAPO party's 34-year-old hold on power. Well, our big focus, the collapse of France's government. Now, this means it now finally falls to President Emmanuel Macron to step up and confront a snowballing political and economic crisis that risks sending shockwaves across the Eurozone. Well, after a heated debate in the National Assembly, 331 of France's 577 lawmakers voted to oust Prime Minister Michel Barnier in a vote of no confidence after he tried to force through an austere budget to fix the country's yawning deficits. So once he formally resigns, Mr. Barnier will become the shortest-lived Prime Minister in the history of the modern French Republic and the first to be booted out by Parliament since 1962. My colleague Ross Cullen joins us with the lowdown from Paris.
Well, a very dramatic evening here in France on Wednesday. Not since 1962 has a government been toppled by the opposition, but that's exactly what has happened. More than 330 lawmakers voting in favour of a no-confidence motion, ousting Michel Barnier and his government. We did see people putting aside their party political differences, and the far left, the left and the far right united behind the far left's motion of no confidence in the Prime Minister, which they introduced into Parliament after Michel Barnier used executive powers to force the 2025 budget legislation through Parliament and bypassing MPs. Now, when that does happen, you open yourself up to the possibility of a no confidence vote. That's exactly what took place on Wednesday, and that's exactly what happened with Michel Barnier losing. All eyes will now be on the president because it is up to Emmanuel Macron to appoint the Prime Minister, and it took him more than 6 weeks in the summer following the inconclusive election in July to appoint Michel Barnier, who has now become the shortest-serving Prime Minister in modern French history. Emmanuel Macron has said that he will be making a formal speech and addressing the French people on Thursday evening, local time. Ross Cullen, NDTV, Paris.
Well, let's turn our attention now to the neighbourhood where former Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina gave her first public address since being ousted in a student-led uprising earlier this year. And she mounted an attack on the country's interim leader Muhammad Yunus over the alleged persecution of minorities. Ms. Hasina said she fled because people were dying indiscriminately, and to quote her, she said, "I never even got the time to resign." But her virtual address during an event in New York followed revelations that perpetrators inside and outside Bangladesh's government siphoned an estimated $17 billion, that's billion with a B, from the country's financial system before Hasina's ouster. It was effectively the largest bank heist in the history of money, as per several reports. And let's get you a quick update from South Korea at the moment, where President Yoon Suk-yeol is heading towards impeachment proceedings after his ill-fated attempt to impose martial law, with the 6 opposition parties submitting a motion to force Yoon from office. Now, the motion is likely to be formally introduced in the legislature, meaning lawmakers could vote as soon as Friday. Now, although the move faces a considerable number of hurdles, it is clear that Yoon's political future is now dicey, whether he resigns or is ousted. The South Korean president, by the way, has accepted the resignation of Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun and nominated his ambassador to Saudi Arabia, Choi Byung-hyuk, as the new defense minister, as per many media reports. By the way, I must also inform you that several countries have issued travel advisories in the wake of President Yoon's short-lived declaration of martial law, and this actually includes the United States, the United Kingdom, Japan, and Singapore. William Gallo now joins us. He's Voice of America's Seoul Bureau Chief. He's been tracking all the finer details on Ground Zero. Thanks so much, William, for making time for us. Now, many are arguing that Yoon is no longer qualified to be president, but take us through the latest developments and the current state of affairs.
Well, we just got news very recently that there will be an impeachment vote on Saturday at 7 p.m. We just got that news from South Korea's opposition parties. They're moving ahead with this vote, even though it's not exactly clear that they have enough support from the ruling party to actually pass this impeachment. Over the past 12 hours or so, what we've seen here in Seoul is Yoon's conservative People Power Party sort of rally around him. There was a meeting last night with Yoon. Leaders emerged from that meeting very defensive and on the attack, in fact, against the opposition party for the obstruction that they feel they have been doing over the last several months, which actually was part of Yoon's motivation for doing this martial law. But it's important to note that it's not clear that the ruling People Power Party can prevent the number of defections needed to stop this. As you've mentioned, all they need is 9 members of the PPP to support this impeachment motion on Saturday in order for the president to be impeached, and that would then send this to the Constitutional Court.
Well, William, as always, thanks so much for joining us with the latest. As William is reporting, the impeachment vote will take place on Saturday at 7 p.m. local time. Meanwhile, South Korea's defense minister has also resigned over the martial law crisis there. In other news, a masked gunman in New York City killed the CEO of United Healthcare, which is one of the US's largest medical insurers, in a brazen targeted attack. Brian Thompson, who was 50 years old, was shot outside a hotel in Midtown Manhattan, where he was set to attend the company's investor conference. Now, a man suspected in the shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was seen in a Starbucks just minutes before the attack. Officials are, of course, investigating all the details, but a little bit of background for you here. United Healthcare's parent company, the US's 4th largest public firm, was targeted earlier this year in the US's biggest ever healthcare data breach that affected 100 million people. But shocking news coming in from New York City about this brazen targeted attack where the United Healthcare CEO has been killed. Ray Locker now joins us from Washington, D.C. with a quick update. Thanks so much, Ray, for making time for us. Brian Thompson, we're reading, reportedly received several threats prior to his murder. What latest details can you disclose currently?
Well, that's, I mean, I saw a video, a security video that showed this shooting, which you have up on your screen, where the assailant came up from Thompson and shot him a couple of times in the back and then went and finished him off while he was lying on the ground, and then escaped on one of these rental city bikes and was last seen somewhere in Central Park in Midtown Manhattan.
What does this really say about the law enforcement and intelligence on ground in New York City? This is not a small suburb we're talking about. It is New York City, end of the day.
Well, it's a big city. I mean, lots of stuff happens there. I find it a very safe city. I've walked around New York at all times of day and night, in particular in Midtown, and feel completely safe, which is something that you probably couldn't say 35, 40 years ago.
Right.
This was a targeted killing. And so there's not a lot you can do about it when somebody comes out of the shadows armed with a gun and kills somebody who they've obviously been stalking. It's not a random thing. It's not like somebody's shaking you down and mugging you and taking your wallet. It's a targeted killing. Somebody knew Thompson was going to be there and specifically shot him.
Ray, thanks so much for joining us with the latest update. Do stay on with us for the next few updates from the United States as well. Well, before that, let me just get you a quick update as far as Trump's new inner circle is concerned. The US President-elect Donald Trump has appointed Jared Isaacman, a billionaire private astronaut and close associate of Elon Musk, as the new head of NASA. Isaacman has previously participated in 2 space flights under his Polaris program, using SpaceX vehicles and also spacesuits for private orbital missions. But if confirmed, Isaacman will oversee NASA's $25 billion budget, focusing heavily on the Artemis program, which is a flagship effort to return humans to the moon. Staying with updates from the United States, the Supreme Court is hearing arguments in just its second major transgender rights case, which is a challenge to a Tennessee law that bans gender-affirming healthcare for minors. The justice's decision, not expected for several months, could affect similar laws enacted by 25 other states in the US and a range of efforts to regulate the lives of transgender people, including which sports competitions they can join and which bathrooms they can use. The case is coming before a conservative-dominated court after a presidential election in which Trump and his allies promised to roll back protections for transgender people. Let's go back across to Ray for a quick update. Ray, we're hearing that the Supreme Court's conservative majority seems very likely to uphold Tennessee's ban on gender-affirming care for minors. Anything you're picking up on?
Well, that's the same stuff that I'm seeing. And very often the indications from an argument in the court are eventually borne out in the ruling, but sometimes not. I remember when the Affordable Care Act was debated in the Supreme Court, people came out of that and said, the law is done, it's not gonna succeed. And actually there was a majority in favor of the law. So, you know, you may get the impression today that they're gonna uphold Tennessee's law, but they may not.
Right, let's wait and see what the US Supreme Court has to say about that. But as always, Ray Locker, thanks so much for joining us with that live update from Washington, D.C. As always, news and updates continue right here on NDTV. Stepping into a very quick break for now.
Becoming a member of jury of NDTV was a totally different challenge altogether.
When you recognize contribution to society, these stories are inspiration for everyone who views them.
The NDTV Indian of the Year is an extremely important initiative.
Nominees were just extraordinary.
Each one of them is a rock star.
And the achievers in this field who are inspiration for the Indians in this country have been chosen for this prestigious award.
The stage is set for Mahayuti 2.0 to take over the charge of Maharashtra here at Azad मैदान.
The decision is made. Devendra Fadnavis will be sworn in as Maharashtra's Chief Minister. Maha swearing in, special coverage on NDTV. Hello and welcome to India Sense.
where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
Now, a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
It's a web of frauds, calls, luring emails, threatening messages. Cyber frauds have cast their net wide and everyone is at risk. We track the victims, their horror stories as they get conned online, extorted and robbed of their hard-earned money. How to identify a cyber fraud and how to stay cyber safe. What are your options? Fraud.con, NDTV initiative for cyber safety. Only on NDTV 24/7. He's the biggest name in the world of entertainment. He is the undisputed king of comedy. His name resonates everywhere. Meet the heartbeat of millions. Kapil Sharma. At the NDTV Indian of the Year Awards, 6 December 2024 on NDTV Network. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number 1 in both online and offline reach in India, beating all its competition. NDTV stands for trust.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital Mumbai.
India's IT capital is always buzz. It's literally a city that never sleeps. And I keep you ahead on all the Bengaluru buzz.
Covering from the southernmost part of India over the last 23 years, I bring in-depth and 360-degree coverage from the Dravidian heartland.
The land of Mishti is also known for its bitter politics. I have seen much water flow under the Howrah Bridge, covering Bengal in all its vivid colors.
While calling India a very important partner, Kuwait's Foreign Minister Abdullah Ali Al Yahya praised Prime Minister Modi, saying that the West Asian nation believes that the Indian leader is one of the wisest in the world. Now, as we have been covering, Abdullah Ali Al Yahya arrived in India earlier this week, late on Tuesday, for an official visit that was aimed at further strengthening our multifaceted relationship between both our countries. In other news, Namibia has elected its first female leader, with Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah declared the winner of last week's presidential election in a result that will extend the ruling SWAPO party's 34-year hold on power. Namibia has elected its first female president in an election that has been considered disputed, and Netumbo Nandi-Ndaitwah has been elected as Namibia's first female president. She actually won the election with 57% of the vote, and Namibia's ruling party has extended its 34 years of power. Let's turn our attention now to Syria, where rebels battled pro-government forces on the outskirts of Hama, which is a major city in western Syria that has become the latest target of the surprise offensive launched by opposition fighters last week, according to both sides. As far as all the details are concerned, and a recap of all the action and how things escalated, listen into our report.
Just when it seemed that West Asia had witnessed enough destruction, a massive rebel offensive in Syria, launched last week, threatens to worsen the region's crisis. In a shocking and sudden move, rebels led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, formerly Al-Qaeda's affiliate, launched an offensive that quickly advanced through northern Syria, capturing large swaths of territory, including parts of Aleppo, one of the largest cities in the war-ravaged countries.
Northern Syria has been rocked by a days-long insurgency as fighters swept through villages and towns and advanced into the city of Aleppo.
Iran, which is one of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's strongest allies, has said it will consider any request from Assad for troops to help tackle a sweeping anti-government offensive. Meanwhile, Russia helped the Syrian government launch strikes in the wake of the rebel offensive. For years, President Assad was able to beat back opposition fighters with the help of Russia, Iran and Hezbollah. Just like in any other conflict, this fresh escalation in Syria has thrown life out of gear for innocent civilians, killing hundreds and displacing tens of thousands.
So this recent escalation of hostilities has caused many civilian casualties, displaced tens of thousands of people, interrupted critical services, and disrupted our humanitarian operations.
Assad has ruled with an iron fist since the year 2000. He's had the upper hand in the civil war so far. But now his top allies are engaged in bigger conflicts of their own, raising the question, how long can Assad cling to power? With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report, NDTV World.
In other news, Cuba's national electrical system collapsed early Wednesday morning after the country's largest power plant failed. This is what the government has confirmed, which is the latest of several such failures as the island's grid falls into disarray amid fuel shortages, natural disaster, and also a severe economic crisis. Well, switching tracks, General Motors has announced it will actually book more than $5 billion in losses and write-downs due to the restructuring of its China joint venture. Facing heavy competition in China that has forced automakers to cut retail prices, the SAIC, General Motors Corporation, is actually restructuring operations, resulting in non-cash impairment of between $2.6 and $2.9 billion and equity losses of around $2.7 billion. This is what GM has said in its security filings. By the way, GM and the Chinese state-owned company Shanghai Automotive Industry Corporation, SAIC, as I just mentioned, each own 50% of the company. My colleague Mugdha has been tracking all the finer details for us. She joins us live at the moment. Mugdha, GM is now taking a $5 billion hit to fix up its struggling China business?
That's correct. That's the what they have filed to the bosses there and declared that they have had to restructure their entire business. And this is not just the case with GM. It is one of the most stark one. But most of the global manufacturers are struggling in China right now because the Chinese companies have become the dominant player in China. And China is a huge market. That decides the fate of lots of these global companies. Even Volkswagen is struggling. Even the big luxury car makers are struggling. What has happened in China in over last couple of years is that the local players like BYD, Geely, they have become the dominant player because they are far ahead in their electrification journey. And China has seen a huge shift towards new energy vehicle, which includes your electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. So companies which are using traditional ICE engines or internal combustion engines, they have been struggling. And just to give you a context, in 2015, GM's market share was 15% of China's market share. Now it's less than 7%. So the market share has clearly halved in less than 10 years.
Right.
So, but they had planned for that kind of investment, that kind of production, and now it's half when the Chinese market is growing rapidly. So they have had to change their strategy, and most of the other companies, even Volkswagen has had to change their strategy.
Yes.
Even Tesla is struggling. Tesla is still growing, but at a lower pace than, say, BYD and Geely.
Mugdha, thanks so much for joining us with the lowdown. As my colleague Mugdha is reporting, facing heavy competition in China that has forced automakers to cut retail prices, the SAIC General Motors Corporation is restructuring operations. With that, let's get you a quick sports update. Well, the talks between the International Cricket Council, the Pakistan Cricket Board, and the Board of Control for Cricket in India, the BCCI, over the Champions Trophy deadlock don't seem to be heading towards a resolution, at least so far. After India rejected Pakistan's condition for a hybrid model, that India would accept similar models for future tournaments, the matter seems stuck. The ICC board will meet in the next 24 hours, though, to decide the fate of the Champions Trophy that currently hangs in balance as we speak. As always, thank you so much for investing your time and watching this edition of The World 24/7. We'll continue to keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.
New day, new show, a new experience. Start your day with the news, not views.
We bring you stories that matter
and impact your lives. News that informs and keeps you ahead.
from Maximum City, Mumbai,
to the seat of governance, Delhi. NDTV brings to you the best breakfast show. The breakfast show only on NDTV 24/7 every morning at 8 a.m.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
Becoming a member of jury of NDTV was a totally different challenge altogether.
When you recognize contribution to society, these stories are inspiration for everyone who views them.
The NDTV Indian of the Year is an extremely important initiative.
Nominees were just extraordinary.
Each one of them is a rock star.
And the achievers in this field who are inspiration for the Indians in this country have been chosen for this prestigious award.
The stage is set for Mahayuti 2.0 to take over the charge of Maharashtra here at Azad मैदान.
the decision is made. Devendra Fadnavis will be sworn in as Maharashtra's Chief Minister. Maha swearing in, special coverage on NDTV. Hello and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
Now a $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Modi is promoting the digitization of the economy, which is accelerating growth in the country.
It's a web of frauds, calls, luring emails, threatening messages. Cyber frauds have cast their net wide and everyone is at risk. We track the victims, their horror stories as they get conned online, extorted and robbed of their hard-earned money. How to identify a cyber fraud and how to stay cyber safe. What are your options? Fraud.con, NDTV initiative for cyber safety. Only on NDTV 24/7. He's the biggest name in the world of entertainment. He is the undisputed king of comedy. His name resonates everywhere. Meet the heartbeat of millions. Kapil Sharma. At the NDTV Indian of the Year Awards, 6th December 2024 on NDTV Network. NDTV proudly upholds its legacy of trust and credibility. According to the prestigious Reuters Institute's Digital News Report 2024, NDTV is the top-most news platform in the country. Number 1 in both online and offline reach in India. Beating all its competition, NDTV stands for trust.
I've been reporting on all issues big and small from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial.
A very good morning. You're watching NDTV 24/7. I'm Divya Wada. We have a whole lot lined up for you on the breakfast show.